Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the live stream. I hope you're all very well this evening. Let's see who we have on tonight. We have Derek. Great to see you, Derek. We have Killer. Thanks for moderating once again, Killer. FSM is the dog. FSM certainly is the dog. We have Enzo the God. Great to see you, Enzo. Sugar Free. Great to see you. Hello to all the early Maxiteers. We have Tiny Demolition Lover. Hope you're well up there in Scotland. Maria. Great to see you too. We have Chatty Rat, great to see you, Chatty. Hope you're fine tonight. Gene T, great to see you. Who else have we got? We've got Jasper, great to see you. Doom and Gloom, no. Well, a little. Tom, great to see you, Tom. Hope you're fine tonight. We also have Northis, great to see you. Can Max let Sir Ron out as well? Sir Ron locked me in the cupboard, no, in the garage last week, and I managed to claw my way out. And when I eventually got out, I saw that he was doing a live stream, and that was very naughty. I hope you haven't given him any money, okay? We also have, let me see, Vimster, great to see you. Derek, great to have you on. Richard, great to see you. Mike Higgins, great to see you, Mike. Hope you're well. We have Richard Prosser, great to have you on. Hope you're well tonight, Richard. Thanks for the links that you sent me. We also have Sammy, great to see you, Sammy. And CGM, great to see you, CGM. Adil, great to see you. Who else have we got? Richard, great to see you. Dahlia, great to see you. Elvis Hardy, great to have you on. The King. We have QA Library, great to see you, QA Library. Ed Stacy, Dr. Rapper Band, great to see you. Suzanne, great to see you once again. Well, so we're up to 127 viewers. That's great. Smash that like button, guys. Remember. Do check out the merch store if you have a chance. There is some new stuff I've uploaded there. Some UBI stuff as well, which is interesting. Very nice material. Very nice things there, especially the UBI stuff. Let Sir Ron out. Sir Ron has been a very naughty boy. He's not the Messiah, and he's a very naughty boy. Hi from Hong Kong, David. Great to see you, David Faulkner. Monkey Tron, great to see you. Buxton, great to have you on. I love your image, Buxton. We have Dominic, great to see you. Space Pills, great to have you on too. Reagan Ali, great to see you. Just let a lot of people come in now. Say hello to them as they come in. We have Conservator, great to see you. Mrs. Max sent him a super chat. Okay, I'll have to have a word with her about that. Don't say it, Max. Don't say what. You be careful if your drink gets spiked with Mr. Sir Ron solution. Yes. And he said, how about a nice cold beer? And I said, sure. And then I woke up in the garage. So I hope he was behaving himself and not talking too much crap. So, well, talking of crap, let's start off with Boris Johnson. Remember, guys, you can remember to smash the like button. You can also send a super chat, and I'll read it out during the stream. And of course, you can support the channel by becoming a patron or just by sharing videos on social media. So we start off with leveling up Boris Johnson. So Boris Johnson has made this promise to level Britain up. Of course, it's a promise, so it means very little. MJ Nichols, great to see you. Boomerage, great to see you. Stop saying UBI, folks. You know, Max can't resist once you mention it. So the cost of Boris Johnson's levelling up $2 trillion, says UK think tank. So it says here, Boris Johnson's plan to level up the UK will require a similar scale of funding to the near £2 trillion reunification of Germany following the fall of the Berlin Wall, a leading think tank has said. Centre for Cities said the scheme outlined so far by the government were a drop in the ocean, and that closing the north-south divide would cost hundreds of billions of pounds over decades if done properly. It's not going to happen. An historic analysis shared with The Guardian, the non-partisan research group said England's biggest cities, including Birmingham, Manchester and Leeds, have the lowest productivity and life expectancy in Western Europe. I've often heard this story, and I don't know if it's true or not. There's a part of Glasgow, I think, a quarter in Glasgow, or a borough in Glasgow, that has the lowest life expectancy in Western Europe or something like that. And it's like 54 is the age, the life expectancy. Not for the city as a whole, but just one section of the city, 54 or 53 years old, because of the level of poverty there. Level up Tory boroughs, bribe them to keep them voting Tory. Yes, I'm afraid so. It's about moving money out of Labour backing areas into Tory backing areas, propping them up. It's not about levelling up. It's about making sure that certain areas continue to vote Tory. So it says, you can see here in this graph, in Madrid, the average person can expect to live nearly a decade longer than someone in Glasgow or Liverpool. In Madrid, it says someone in Liverpool, where life expectancy is 4 years below the European average. People in Manchester, Newcastle and Birmingham live on average 2 years less than those on the continent, the figures show. Paul Sweeney, the policy director of Centre for Cities, said, "We've had this north-south divide for at least 85 years. It's a huge challenge to address." I would love to speak with somebody like this. I may actually attempt to reach out to them, Paul Sweeney or somebody from Centre for Cities. This is very interesting information, very interesting data. And it'd be interesting to go into the why. Is it just poverty? Are there other political aspects to this? Environmental, access to NHS, for example, access to healthy food, supermarkets. Many housing estates tend to have very little public transport in the area, so people end up going to shopping centres and buying a lot of food for the whole month or whatever, or relying on corner shops, which generally don't provide a great selection of fresh fruit and vegetables. Super hamster facing Bow Wowser, avoid the slower balls with the like. Tory Redwall Borough will become known as Rotten Boroughs. A rotten candidate for a rotten borough. Old Baldrick. The UK is losing everything, really. Sweeney said that the scale of funding needed to be similar to that spent by the German government in the rehabilitation of East Germany following the fall of the Berlin Wall in November 1989. The cost estimated to have reached €2 trillion, 1.7 trillion pounds, met partly by a solidarity charge tax on all German adults. And they paid it, and they didn't really complain about it. Can you imagine Boris Johnson imposing a solidarity tax in the UK? I don't think it would go down very well. Not because the British people would not like to level up the country. It's because they wouldn't trust the Tories. And it'd be difficult for the Tories to try and sell any sort of solidarity tax in the UK, I think. At the moment, we're in the rounds of a couple of small pots of funding and some nice warm words about some places and free ports. The East German example gives you a peg to assess how far we are away from that. If we're absolutely miles away, which we are currently, that feels uncomfortable. But if there's something more compelling that gets you closer to that, then it's pretty close to where you need to be. A government spokeswoman said it was investing billions of pounds to regenerate parts of Britain, including the 4.8 billion Levelling Up Fund and 2.4 billion contributed to 101 areas through the Towns Fund. See, a lot of this could have been paid for through European structural funds, but that's no longer possible. The UK could have used its influence in the EU to get access to more money, or to promote some sort of levelling up fund all over Europe, and the UK would have access to more cash if it truly cared about that. But of course it doesn't care about that, because Boris Johnson and the Tories don't truly care about levelling up. It's just a slogan. It's just an attempt to prop up Tory backing seats, Tory backing constituencies, and make sure that the Tory MP that's in that area is re-elected at the next election. It's not, they don't care about the poor, the working class. I've said this on numerous occasions, and we're all getting a bit tired of it, because nothing changes. It's take money from the poor and give it to the rich. That's the Tory ethos. If there isn't much money to go around, well then cut services, but never touch the rich. Make sure that they're always protected. Give them contracts if necessary. Let me read some more of your comments. The North-South divide is misleading. Parts of the South are badly deprived too. Yeah, I think it's more. I think what the Tories want to do is not so much a North-South divide, but a red-blue divide. Constituencies that vote for Labour get more and more deprived, and areas that vote for the Conservatives get richer and richer, because then you can point to this is what you get when you vote for the Conservatives. Look at all these areas that are voting Labour. Look how poor they are. Look at all the crime they have. That's what you get for voting Labour. And of course, it's behind the scenes, it's the Conservative government not providing enough funding to local councils in order to deal with problems that ordinary people face on a daily basis. I'm deprived as well, Max. Depraved. Sorry, I misread that. It's not just old-fashioned lies, but rebranding. Under Cameron, we had the Northern Powerhouse. And what was it? Now it's Global Britain. What was it? Not United Britain. I don't remember. There was another slogan. One Nation Tory or something like that. Anyway, I want to cover shortly, just briefly, a Brexit story. What's interesting, of course, is this is from the pro-Tory, pro-Brexit newspaper, The Telegraph. And I don't see, unless I just had a quick look through this before I came on, but I see no reference to Brexit, although we know here that Brexit is the problem. So I'm not very familiar with this restaurant, but I hear that it is quite famous. It says Nando's has been forced to shut restaurants and close and reduce hours after some of its chicken deliveries were hit by a national shortage of lorry drivers. I wonder why there's a national shortage of lorry drivers. The popular restaurant chain, known for its spicy piri piri chicken, revealed that it would lend 70 staff to its suppliers to minimize disruption, which is affecting around 50 of its restaurants. It blamed the closure on the national shortage of heavy goods vehicle drivers, a staffing crisis, and the impact of the pingdemic. Isn't it interesting this pingdemic is still being used as an excuse for the problem of a shortage? Because the pingdemic, when did it... I've been covering this pingdemic for about a month now. And if you're if you're asked to self-isolate, you're supposed to self-isolate for 10 days? Not 2 months. Okay. So once again, the use of, yes, it's the pingdemic that's the problem, is a pile of crap. We know the reason. There's a shortage of staff because of Brexit, because of the ending of freedom of movement, and there's a shortage of heavy goods vehicle drivers for the same reason, but also because many drivers don't want to return to Britain because of the toxic environment as well. which has forced supply workers to self-isolate after being alerted to contact with the coronavirus sufferer through the NHS COVID app, which seems to have highlighted people who were not infected. It seems I'm not fully up to speed on that, but I read something about that. Nando's has been forced to pause home deliveries while it tries to appease disgruntled customers. On Twitter, the company said the UK's supply chain is having a bit of a mare right now. This is having a knock-on effect with some of our restaurants across England, Scotland and Wales. We are doing everything we can to get piri piri back where it belongs, on your plates. Nando's website said that the restaurants included sites in London, North West, Midlands, South East and South West, as well as one in Scotland. What's interesting here is the chickens were pinged. What's interesting is, as far as I know, this also has a restaurant chain. This chain has restaurants in Northern Ireland, and they were not affected. But surely, if it's a pingdemic, then they would be affected as well. But they weren't. Once again, this article here doesn't mention Brexit at all. It says here, Nando's spokesperson said the UK food industry has been experiencing disruption across its supply chain in recent weeks due to staff shortages. A number of our restaurants have been impacted. However, we can confirm that from today, Nando's will be lending 70 of our brilliant team members to support our key suppliers, working in partnership to get things moving again. The Road Haulage Association has estimated that a shortage of 100,000 heavy goods vehicle drivers, mainly because European Union workers had left the UK. I wonder why. And due to the suspension of driver training and testing during the pandemic. To help tackle the shortage of lorry drivers, 40 new test examiners are being recruited. 40 test examiners, not 40 testing centres are being set up. 40. Okay, anyone in the chat, can you calculate how long it would take 40 testing examiners to examine 100,000 people? Like, I don't think they're going to be working 24 hours a day. The Driver and Vehicle Standards Agency said on Tuesday that the total would be made up of existing employees moving to new roles and external candidates across England and Wales. The lack of drivers has caused disruption and delays across the food supply chains, which has led to product shortages in some cases. It has also disrupted waste management services, which I covered in another video, in some parts of the country, forcing councils to pause or cancel rubbish collection in summer, which is lovely. The government recently granted a temporary extension to lorry drivers' working hours. Yes, work more, but we need to sleep. That's not important. To help tackle the crisis, but it has so far ruled out drafting in military personnel to plug the gap. It has ruled it out until it gets so bad that they have to. It's not really ruled out, it's just on hold at the moment. But probably will. But the problem also with the military is that there aren't enough people who have a heavy goods vehicle driver certification. Now, I guess the next step would be just to put anyone driving a lorry. But I think, hey you, can you drive a lorry? No. You know what a lorry is? Yes. Okay, get on board. This one makes it go forward, this one makes it go backwards. That's all you need to know. that would be probably the next step. Take people who are unemployed and force them to drive lorries. Give them basic training. If this had happened, when lorry, like Tesla wants to roll out a lorry that is autonomous, then this would have dealt with, that would have dealt with this problem. But we're a few years away from that. So unfortunately for the Tories, Brexit happened a little bit too soon before the technology could have kicked in and helped them out. Why can't we use small non-heavy goods vehicles, because that would require more of them, and there aren't enough drivers for them either. And also, it's more expensive. So you'd end up having, if you had like vans instead of heavy goods, like articulated lorries, it would become much more expensive because you'd need more vans, more drivers, and then all the costs that go with that. So it's much cheaper just to have one big truck take goods from one place to another. Artemis, great to see you on the stream. Hope you're well. The chicken is being choked. That's terrible. I know the meaning. Those 2,000 heavy goods vehicle drivers are already working, I heard. Many are Sunday warriors. Yes, I think most of them from the Territorial Army. So, Del Boy Trotters Independent. Michael Gove running it. Or Nigel Farage would be run. Nigel Farage is like Del Trotter, only the evil version. the how can I say the dishonest version. If Boris drove a truck, it would crash through. If I got out of the parking spot. Apparently, all the students at E. I don't understand that. Nando's is a generic piece of crap anyway. No loss there. And Boomer H says, UBI. Let tractor drivers do it. Oh my god, yeah. Do you reckon we will return to freight via canals at this rate, Max? As long as people don't mind waiting. So, with Amazon Prime, where you order something and it arrives tomorrow, it will arrive just by canal. It'll be next week instead, or maybe in 2 months' time. A bit like when you order something off Wish, and then when it arrives, you're like, did I order? I don't even remember ordering that. Good news, you're on universal credit. Bad news, you need to drive this. Terrible news, you need to pay the diesel. No, they may throw in the diesel for free. Ministerian, great to see you on the stream. Sorry I'm late, no problem. Hopefully the Afghan people can drive our trucks instead of those other foreigners that Brexiteers threw out. Yes. UBI is daft. No, it's not. Why don't we just eat the Brexiteers? Fried Farage, anyway. No. Like the Royal Mail. Oh my god, these comments are amazing. You make a mistake on your video about salmon sales. The figure was for world export, not EU. Ah, okay. Honest commenter. Thanks for that. I don't remember which it was. It was the 2019 figures or the 2021 figure I was talking about, which was for world. Why did the chicken cross the road? Thanks very much, FSM is the dog. I know there's a sort of dark meaning behind that question, that joke. But why did the chicken cross the road? To get away from Nigel Farage, perhaps. Why are you so against the UK, Max? You were laughing every 2 seconds as if you're enjoying the problems that were happening with Brexit. Where am I laughing every 2 seconds? I'm laughing at the stupidity of people who continue to say that Brexit was a good idea. Many people voted for Brexit under the impression that things would get better, not things would get worse. That there would be jobs, that businesses would be able to export all over the world, that generally people's lives would be improved. Now, most people, I think, have come to the conclusion that that was a lie, that was a mistake. And I respect people who make a mistake and then own up to it. I don't respect people who say, yes, it's still great, and you just have to wait 50 years for the benefits to arrive. Or that they're continuing to tell people, yes, everything's going to be great, although they're not going to suffer the consequences. Nigel Farage is not going to suffer the consequences Jacob Rees-Mogg is not suffering the consequences, but people who have lost their jobs, businesses who have to move operations to the Netherlands, for example, in order to continue to operate. I'm not laughing at them. The Brexiteers are laughing at them. The Brexiteers told them to vote for this. So either the Brexiteers didn't know that this was going to happen, or they didn't care. Which is it? Small vans can't be compared to lorries too much, as it's all about linear equation in mathematics. Chickens for Brexit. If the government just observed the current laws and didn't discriminate against disabled people, then we would already have a UBI. Benefits are meant to provide for people who can't afford to live. You carry on laughing, Max. There's so much that is bad right now. We need to laugh when we can. Did anyone bother to teach people that Brexit was bad? But they were engaging in Project Fear and scaremongering. Food shortages? Of course there won't be food shortages. How dare anyone say that there'd be food shortages? That's Project Fear. It's and I have to clarify, there's a difference between people who voted for Brexit and Brexiteers. Brexiteers are the ones who probably deep down know that it's been a mistake, but they continue to sell the idea, like the ones you find online as well. The Andrew Walkers and the Jeff Taylors, or the what do you call them, the talk radio people as well, and the Farages, of course. There must be a big pile of dead chickens that could not be delivered. Yes, probably. And probably what will happen with those dead chickens is that they will be bleached, washed, and then sent on again. Because something I discovered is that you can't, if beef goes bad, you can't modify it and resell it. But chicken can be modified in a sense and resold. Now, this was the case a few years ago. I don't know if it's the same today, but there was a time where you could bleach chicken because it had gone moldy or it had changed color. You could bleach it white again and then resell it. But I don't know if that's possible. You should do a video on the retrospective of how Project Black Swan and Yellowhammer compared to the reality of the deal they signed. That's very interesting, Rory. I will actually look into that, because, for example, in particular, Operation Yellowhammer made some very interesting predictions, and some of them have come true, some of them may not have. But a big problem with predictions when it came to Brexit was we had made predictions chlorinated chicken. We had made predictions that there would be serious problems at the ports. Then it turned out that there wasn't serious problems at the ports, but that was because of the grace periods that were brought in. So the EU protected Brexit in a sense by allowing these grace periods, and also because certain checks were not being carried out on goods leaving the UK. Coming into the UK. So if things had gone as they should have, there would have been a lot of problems. But a lot of these problems were mitigated because of goods being waved through, so checks not being carried out, and then these grace periods as well, which are ending or being extended. Bleach is not the problem. It is the fact that you need it, I guess. Boris Johnson and resell somewhere abroad. When is Sir Ron Venti coming back? Well, Sir Ron Venti has been a very naughty boy, so I'm going to have to keep an eye on him. But if he behaves himself, I may let him do another live stream sometime soon. But he'll be probably making some videos. I can't stop him from doing that because I can't watch him 24/7. We let him out of the attic from time to time, but I'm completely against that. 42 minutes ago, you've only been off 5 minutes. Not sure what that's about. Food shortages have not hit yet. Harvest season is coming to the close. All vegetables need to be imported. It will be back to January delivery issues, combined with the lack of drivers that left during February. Yeah, things are. I'm afraid things are going to get worse, not get better. Some areas will improve, but a lot of areas are going to suffer, and you're going to see more and more shortages. And what's really annoying about all of this is that the general public don't seem to care. The general public go into the supermarket and say, oh look, the shelves are empty. When this happened at the beginning of the pandemic, people were losing their minds. Remember the bog roll shortages, and how people were panicking in the supermarkets because, oh no, I'm not going to be able to get my Marmite. I'm not going to be able to get... And people were stocking up in ridiculous way. It was so ridiculous, just beyond ridiculous. People were stockpiling perishable food, food that was not in cans or even bread or biscuits, dry food. No, they were stockpiling things like steaks and chicken. Things that have to be eaten within a few days. And then, and obviously they couldn't eat, 25 kilos of chicken in a few days. So a lot of it was thrown away. At the same time, of course, food banks were relying on donations and support. Stuffer Max is not called Suffer Max. It's not called suffering. It's called democracy. You voted for it. Own it. Yeah, big roll apocalypse. The British public are basically sheep. I don't like to claim point the finger at the public so much. But it's just, I really don't understand how there are shortages and people are not really all that bothered about it. At what stage will the British people say, okay, we've been thrown under the bus by the Brexiteers, now we want some payback? Really, at what stage will it get to? Because many benchmarks have been hit and the people still haven't complained, which is mystifying. So I just saw a notification. Where's my mouse gone? Okay, disappeared. Okay, so apathy is rife, yes, unfortunately. Okay, let's move on. Of course, the big issue of the week, of the last few days, is of course Afghanistan, and we have to talk about that, of course. Max, well, one moment. Max, they have had to get up and go to work, and their universal credit is affected. Why wouldn't you freeze the chicken or even can it? No, I'm talking about the people who bought but the people in this, like people who are living in a flat or whatever, they maybe don't have the space to store the chicken, even if they did can it. But Big Mash, great to see you on the stream. Hope you're well. Oh, there's a lot of messages getting eliminated for some reason. Okay, so it says here, MPs to question Johnson over UK response to Afghan crisis. So tomorrow Boris Johnson will appear in the House of Commons, an emergency meeting. So the MPs have been called back from their summer holidays. Facts Not Fiction, great to see you on the stream. So the MPs are going to be called back from their summer holidays to the House of Commons. The House of Commons is going to be full of people in the middle of a pandemic. Yay! For what reason, I don't know. Is it necessary for them to be there in person? Probably not. But the rules have now been changed, so they will be back in person. So you're going to see, like in the old days, the House of Commons full of MPs. But it goes on to say Boris Johnson is braced for criticism by senior MPs over the UK's role in the Afghanistan crisis as the Prime Minister prepares to address the House of Commons in a rare sitting in August. In the half-day debate on Wednesday, Johnson is expected to defend Britain's response to the Taliban's rapid takeover of the country, as well as the UK's efforts to withdraw British and Afghan nationals. The UK currently has 900 troops in Afghanistan to help with the evacuation efforts of 3,000 British and dual national and a similar number of Afghans who worked alongside the UK forces. British combat troops left Afghanistan in 2014. I actually didn't realise that British troops had completely left. I thought there was still a small number there, but it doesn't seem to be the case. But Johnson is expected to face criticism after the UK's humanitarian response to the fall of Afghanistan and the government's preparedness. In July, he said there was no military path to victory for the Taliban. That aged very well. The Taliban have been basically in control of 90% of Afghanistan in the past. There was a stage where 90% of Afghanistan was under the control of the Taliban, where the last pocket of resistance was in Kabul itself and maybe Kandahar. But generally the Taliban have had a strong grip over most of Afghanistan. Okay, yes, it was mainly mountain area and the countryside. They didn't really hold a huge amount of power in the cities. But it shouldn't be a surprise to people how quickly the Taliban were able to take over. And what I mean by that is, look at ISIS in Syria and Iraq. What was it, a couple of years ago? How quickly the Iraqi army capitulated in the face of ISIS. ISIS was even a much smaller or less well organized than the Taliban. The Taliban have been around for decades. But so it was almost normal to expect the Afghan army to capitulate, because they were not driven by loyalty to the government. They were driven by loyalty to a paycheck. I'm not saying that they were mercenaries. Look, there were people who were offered a job. The Americans are here. The Americans are basically running the country. And if you want to, put food on the table, you need to work for the Americans, either directly or indirectly. Reagan Elite, thank you so much, Reagan Elite, for that super chat. So many lives lost and lives destroyed for nothing. And it has been for nothing. 20 years of war for nothing. Like, what was the point? The original point was to go in and take out Osama bin Laden. Allegedly. We know that Al-Qaeda is behind this attack on the 11th of September, so we're going to go to Afghanistan. Like, wouldn't it have made more sense to put pressure on him in Saudi Arabia? No, we don't want to do that, because that would piss off our allies there. Impose sanctions on him and his family in Saudi Arabia. No, we don't want to do that. We don't want to put any pressure on the Saudis. So we're going to go after him in Afghanistan. But I'm not going to go into that whole history. We could be here for hours. So, but there was no goal really. So or you can say the goal was just to get bin Laden, and then it was okay. We've gotten rid of the people who are protecting bin Laden. Now we need to have a government. Let's impose democracy. Yay, that'll work. And I've said this before on live streams, and I've said this before in videos. Afghanistan is not like a Western nation. People's loyalty is not towards a political party or an ideology generally. It's more, their loyalty is more connected to family, to clan, to kinship. People are more likely, and you've seen this in elections, for example, in Afghanistan, where people would vote for the local guy because he's the local guy, not because he has policies that would benefit people in that area or whatever. No, it's because he's part of this clan, or he's part of this family. There was no sense of, I'm voting for this guy because he's part of this political party and he's going to push forward this. I'm not saying nobody voted that way, but the vast majority of people voted along family lines, clan lines, tribal lines, not political lines. And the Americans and the Westerners didn't understand this, I think. And they kept plugging away at hoping that, look, if we spend enough time there, we try to convert the people to our way of thinking, they'll eventually vote for governments that will be friendly, of course, to the West. And the public will see this as the way forward, and the public will be behind them. But it doesn't work like that. What are the developed Islamic nations? Surely they would intervene. No one wants to intervene in Afghanistan. That's the problem. You cannot blame them for that. I don't know. I'm not blaming the Afghan people whatsoever. It's a different way of thinking. And, you know, something I find interesting is, and it's not a fantastic comparison, but in the 1700s in Scotland, they had the clans, and it was a feudal society. But people's loyalty was not to the king, but it was to their clan. And that was very important because it represented family. And you can't just come in and say, okay, from tomorrow, you're not going to vote for your cousin or your uncle or whatever. You're going to vote for this guy who you don't know but represents your ideals or our ideals. That's not how it works there. I'm not running down Afghanistan, the Afghan people. I'm just saying that's the way that's their traditions. That's how they think. It's different to us. They've had a different evolution to us in the West, and we didn't understand that, and we didn't respect that. And of course, when it came to the point where you have to defend a country that you don't have any real connection to, for what? For a paycheck that it will finish next week? Of course you're not going to have any loyalty. People would have loyalty to their friends, to their family, but that's as far as it went. And the American military did not seem to understand that. Or perhaps some of them did, but it was wishful thinking that the Afghan army would stand up and repel the Taliban as they were marching forward. And we've seen, and as I said, in Iraq we saw something similar where the Iraqi army capitulated extremely quickly in the face of ISIS, for slightly different reasons, but in a similar sense. Tad, thank you so much for that super chat. The local guys built the roads, you must vote for them. Reference to Irish politics. Very good. Yes. But it's, and once again, it's not a criticism of the Afghan people. It's their way of thinking. Family is more important than some guy who's claiming to represent me. Now, for example, I'm the complete opposite of that. I would prefer to vote for someone who's putting forward a policy that helps the country or helps the community. If I don't care what their surname is, I don't care if they're a cousin of mine or if I've never met them. I care more about the policy. But I understand not everyone thinks in that way. And the evolution of the country can sometimes convince people it's better to vote for family because you know family are going to look out for you. How can you trust somebody you've never met? How can you trust somebody who lives in another city who's not walked in your shoes? So I fully understand their way of thinking. India will suffer. Notice how China is working with the Taliban. People forget the Arab nations are divided. Example, the Palestinians are not welcome in most of the UAE. Saudi Arabia, Iraq and Iran. Qatar sides with Iran and has been ostracized by the rest because of the Saudis want it. Yes, it's an absolute mess. And there are many different rivalries, and some of them are religious, some of them are tribal, some of them are political. But yes, there are so many different reasons why some will form coalitions and others will see each other as enemies. I wouldn't vote for anyone in my family. They're nearly all completely bonkers. Thanks for that honesty there, Richard. A test is around 90 minutes, say 2 hours with admin and administrator can roughly do 3 tests a day. So how many tests at 100,000 drivers? How long would that take, QA Library? Test stations aren't open all the time. Yeah, so you have to put in the, what about sick leave? What about problems with holidays, things like that? Saturdays and Sundays are probably the test centers are closed. Breaks, things like that. Cancellations as well. China is doing the best to play nice with the Taliban because they are the key backers of the Uyghur nationalists in the unrest there. There are Uyghur fighters in the Taliban. Yeah, I thought about that as well. China don't want problems in China, obviously, and they probably see it as, well, there's a possibility that if we make peace with the Taliban, we can convince them to leave us alone or not create problems in China. 3 years max. Okay, so it takes 3 years to train up all the drivers. So shortages for 3 years. Yay. Okay, let's move on from that. So Dominic Raab, the Foreign Secretary, who I mentioned in a video today, didn't know about any of this. So he was like, I didn't know. None of us, we're all taken by surprise that the Taliban would take over the country. Really?
With us in the studio now. Hello to you, Foreign Secretary. Thanks for joining us on the programme this morning. To the outside world, it appears what's going on in Kabul is absolute chaos. What's your understanding?
Well, I got a situation update this morning. The position at the airport is stabilising. There's been a surge of US and UK troops. We've got...
Is he talking about the airport in Cyprus or the airport in Kabul?
600 extra personnel there. It's critically important, not just for the stability on the ground for Afghans, but critically for our evacuation effort. We've made real progress. We had 150 British nationals come out on Sunday. Over the last week, we've also had 289 of those Afghan nationals who have served the UK so loyally in Afghanistan, and we expect over the next 24 hours to have 350 more both British nationals and Afghan nationals who've worked for us coming out. So the situation is stabilising, but obviously we're monitoring it very carefully.
Ben Wallace told me yesterday and again last Friday that we needed something like 1,500 people a day to come out.
Well, it depends if you're talking about the ARAP programme or nationals. We've had...
It doesn't matter, does it? It's chaos, though. We need to get them out.
Well, but actually, I think getting our British nationals out, of course, there's something like 2,000, the figure is changing all the time, who have contacted us. So that's a much smaller figure. In terms of ARAP, yes, we want to get all of those out as well. ARAP, of course, is those, whether it's translators or other Afghans who have loyally served the UK. So we're doing everything we can, but obviously it depends on the security situation on the ground. That's why we're putting in 600 of our own personnel. I spoke to Tony Blinken, the US Secretary of State, yesterday. They're upping every hour and every day the security that they need, including crowd control to deal with the surge of Afghans
happened yesterday?
who are seeking to get out, given the Taliban takeover.
What happened yesterday?
Well, I think given the Taliban takeover, given the nervousness, the fear on the ground, you've seen a lot of people effectively heading for the door. And we've got to make sure that we can stabilise the situation. And I think ultimately British people would expect us, and I'm sure the American public the same, to prioritise our nationals, including dual nationals in Afghanistan, but also those who have so loyally served us. That's what we're doing.
OK. A large number of thugs is what I read in this morning's newspapers that are on their way to Kabul. This uneasy peace that is in place at the moment is very soon going to be shattered. What's your intelligence on that?
Well, we don't talk about intelligence, as you know.
You must be concerned about it, though.
We don't talk about intelligence like we have any intelligence.
Well, there are reports all the time.
Who's saying mankinis? He's wearing a mankini under the suit.
The situation is very fluid. The Taliban have exerted control far more rapidly than we expect. There will be dissenting rebel voices and actions. What we want to see at the moment is two things. One, the evacuation conducted as stably as possible. We've had assurances at the higher level from the Taliban publicly through the Taliban Political Commission in Doha and through third parties. I spoke to the Qatari Foreign Minister and the Pakistani Foreign Minister. They've made all sorts of commitments in the Doha Agreement, which dates back to 2020. We expect to hold them to account to that. And secondly, then there is the...
We expect to hold them to account. How are you going to hold them to account? Hold them to account in what way?
Medium-term strategy, which must mean making sure that Afghanistan can't be used by terrorist groups to attack neighbours or the West again, trying to provide the humanitarian relief that the people in Afghanistan need, given the hugely unstable situation you've described.
Humanitarian relief? Didn't you just cut aid spending?
That's going to be very challenging. We won't obviously be giving aid directly to the Taliban. We do want to provide humanitarian relief to the civilian population. And I think there's a much broader question about stabilising that region and how we engage with those countries who are going to be very difficult, but will have a stake in trying to stabilise the situation, from Pakistan, India to China, all with very different views. We've got to show the international leadership to try and bring some stability and a positive track forward.
More than that, Ken McCallum, the head of MI5, is very worried about UK-based groups which have been radicalised that could cause problems here in the UK. How worried are you about that?
Well, look, we listened to Ken and the Home Secretary and the law enforcement operations here. We track that very, very carefully. Of course, what happens in the Middle East, we know, can have a ricochet effect back in the UK. But what I do know is that Ken and the MI5 team and all of our law enforcement are absolutely red hot on making sure that we protect British nationals and the UK. That's our number one priority.
Is he right to be worried? Ben Wallace says he is.
I think it's always right that the head of MI5 is alert and sensitive to all changes abroad that will have a security implication in the UK.
OK. I want to go back to the people that are coming out of Afghanistan. I've been speaking to a lot of your colleagues. They're absolutely furious that they say about 20,000 Afghan nationals need to return to the UK because they are either people that work for us directly or their families who are in extreme danger if they stay there.
Yeah.
Is that the sort of number that you're looking at?
Well, the total numbers are being processed by through the ARAP scheme. We've got 3,300 Afghan nationals and their families out to date. I think we're the highest number proportionally.
So I just think inconsequential says, send Jacob Rees-Mogg to speak condescendingly to them. It'll be over in seconds. It'll be over for someone, yes.
Of all of our allies. So I think it's been very difficult, but we've made good progress. We want to now stabilise that airport and get as many of them out as we possibly can.
But how many are
but look,
do you recognise that number?
Well, I'm not sure about the number exactly, but look, they're clearly in the thousands because we've got 3,300 out already. We want to get as many of them as we physically can out. But of course, it depends on the stability of the situation on the ground, which is why we come back to the point that you mentioned earlier, rightly. The stability at the airport is absolutely key. And I've been working very closely with Ben Wallace and the Home Secretary to make sure we can do everything we can, give ourselves the capacity every day to get as many out as quickly as we can, given the window of opportunity for that.
Do you agree with your Defence Secretary that, sadly, some people will be left behind?
I think there's always a risk of that. What I'm focused on is just doing everything physically possible to get British nationals out, to get as many of those who've loyally served us out, and also to think about how we then move forward with an international strategy which can stabilise the situation for the people of Afghanistan.
Under what timescale are you hoping to be able to do that?
I think it's difficult to say because the situation is so fluid. We were all caught by surprise by the speed and pace and scale of the Taliban takeover. The Americans have talked about the end of August, but ultimately we need to get people out as quickly as possible, as soon as possible, and it will depend on the security situation on the ground. But to come back to the point, I do think, and having spoken to Tony Blinken, my opposite number yesterday, do think that the airport is more stable today than it was.
Why does he keep referencing the Americans all the time? He's referenced the American Secretary of Defense, was it, or Secretary of State, about 3 or 4 times already.
Yesterday, and we need to make sure that we consolidate that in the days ahead.
Okay. Given that you said that not just you, but many were taken by surprise, not least the Americans as well, how disappointed are you that our military top brass didn't know that this was coming?
I just want to comment on something Adrian said. The US remains firmly entrenched in Pakistan and can still intervene in Afghanistan from their bases in Pakistan and will unless reasonable sentiment is reached. The Taliban knows this. Yes, I think this is very important to remember that while the US did evacuate from Afghanistan, they have a very strong position, very strong presence in Pakistan. And they have intervened before. They have attacked Afghanistan from Pakistan before. It's not gone down very well in Pakistan, but I think considering the circumstances, you're probably likely to see if over the next number of months or over the next year is probably a few drone strikes in Afghanistan. I don't know whether maybe to punish the Taliban in some way. Certainly a huge amount of surveillance, and of course the Taliban would probably try to respond to that. But we're definitely, I don't know if we're going to see it in the media, but we're definitely going to see some minor tit for tat over the next number of months, I think. But how did the military not know?
Well, it's not just a question, by the way, of the military. We have an assessment process. We've looked at it for, since I become Foreign Secretary, I've been in NSC's National Security Council meetings. We've monitored this very carefully. But the truth is, across the world, people were caught by surprise. I haven't spoken to an international interlocutor, including countries in the region, over the last week, who hasn't been surprised. But the reality is...
to predict better after 20 years in the country.
Well, yeah, but we saw a very swift change in the dynamics, and of course this has been...
No, it was not. It was not so much that they weren't surprised. It was wishful thinking. They had hoped that they would have been able to evacuate the troops and then have enough time to eventually evacuate everyone. In a sense, they were not so much surprised, but it was wishful thinking.
Part and parcel of the withdrawal of Western troops, but it's also been the way and the approach of the Taliban, and of course it's been a test for the Afghan security forces. All of those factors have been very fluid, but no one saw this coming. Of course we would have taken action if we had.
But I guess...
Night Raven says, presently there are no US bases in Pakistan. Are you sure about that? None officially? Or really there are none?
My question is...
So then if it's not Pakistan, it would be where? Saudi Arabia? Iraq?
Shouldn't we have?
I think it's easy to say that with the benefit of hindsight, but the truth is you're always measuring a very fluid constellation matrix, if you like, of risk factors, and that's the reality.
Is the Taliban an organisation that you can do business with?
Ordinarily, you'd say no. They don't share our standards of human rights. They don't
that doesn't stop us dealing with China.
They don't treat women the way that
doesn't stop
we
us
want.
dealing with China.
Well, I think we're going to have to be pragmatic, as the UK policy has always been. We've engaged through the political commission of the Taliban in Doha. It's important we engage through third parties. That's why I spoke to my Qatari foreign minister. We're going to need to be able to send clear messages. And our message is going to be this: Afghanistan must never be used to launch terrorist attacks against the West. We've had 20 years of success.
But Afghanistan was not being used. The Taliban don't really engage in that sort of business. The Taliban engage in terrorism in Afghanistan, but not so much outside Afghanistan. That's something that's different about the Taliban and Al-Qaeda and other terrorist other organizations. Yes, they're a terrorist organization in a sense, but they're different. They don't launch attacks into other countries generally. There has been cases of affiliates attacking in Pakistan, but they're not really the same thing.
In that regard, we've had a range of other successes. We've seen 10 million more children in education that never saw a school book since 2001. Many of those young girls. We've cleared 8 million landmines. So we have secured gains in that 20 years. Clearly, they're now at risk. Yep. What we want to do is everything we.
What do you mean at risk? They're gone. At risk. At risk is something that can be saved. They can't be saved. Let's just call a spade here. And I hate to say it, but we have to be honest. Those people are in serious danger now. Their fate will be determined by the Taliban, not by the United States military, not by Dominic Raab. We have zero influence now. The only thing we can do is bomb places. That's the only diplomatic response we can have to this. But please be honest. Women and girls who are going to school will highly likely not be going to school anymore. Everything that has been achieved from a social point of view, from a humanitarian point of view, from every point of view which improves people's lives in Afghanistan, has been frozen and is going backwards. Now, there's a possibility that the Taliban have evolved somewhat in the last 20 years, but I highly doubt it. There have been reports of some news agencies allowing women to go to broadcast on TV, but we'll have to wait and see how long that lasts, because it could be a case of many people have left, they're short of staff, and they're making some concessions at the moment. But I imagine these will be short-lived. The Taliban are fascists hiding behind the facade of Islamic purity. Yes. I was speaking to somebody about this today, and I said, the Taliban are basically Nazis. Without the goals of invading other countries and converting them to their ideology. Please explain to me how they're not.
We can, through the full range of diplomatic, economic sanction measures, to make sure we can use as much leverage as we conceivably have, and I'm realistic about that, to try and moderate and exercise some form of positive influence around the regime ahead. And of course, there is still
positive influence? What the hell? Dominic Raab thinks he has some sort of positive influence over the Taliban? Raab, speak to the Russians and they know about the Taliban. 2021 has so much going for it now. Yes. They might change depending how much development offers to take up with China and Pakistan. We will see. Yeah, we should see. I'm not ruling out how they may moderate somewhat, but not moderate to an extent that we would be happy with. But they are probably likely a little bit different to the Taliban of 2001. They could be worse. They could be slightly better. There's a fairly big part of Nazism that you're dismissing there. Look, I understand, but their ideology is pretty much the same. No one saw this coming. If it had been followed any decent YouTuber, you would have seen that it was hampered. What was happening in particular, Vash showed weeks ago the advance of the Taliban and collapse of the army. Yes. We don't even have a positive influence on our own continent now, thanks to well said, Mark Watton. Yes. Dominic Raab probably doesn't even have any positive influence over the Conservative Party, never mind a positive influence over the Taliban. So guys, we're about halfway through the stream, so let's just take a short comedy moment and just show you this funny video. Themed video, but still quite funny, so enjoy.
Oh God! I've been attacked! Oh no! Are you okay, buddy? Who'd hit one of us? I know, right? All we've ever done is bring a bit of culture and keep the peace. But seriously, who was it? Mainly that guy. More drinks! Right, let's get it! Are you stupid? He's rich and powerful. We'll do business with him. Oh, yeah. So what are we gonna do? Isn't it obvious? We're gonna get him and him. No one gives a shit about them. We'll get away with murder. Were they involved? Vaguely, not at all. Cool. And why will we say they attacked you? We'll just make something up. They hate our freedoms, or something. That's not why we don't like you. The problem is you hate ours. Sorry no, but why are we targeting them? Hello? Keep up, old timer. Have you forgotten all the cool stuff that they've got hidden away that we could use? Oh yeah. We'll just beat them up and bleed them dry. I'll get away with anything now. Yeah! Will it take long though? I mean, I'm still a badass, as you know. But I'm not quite the fighting on the beaches, streets and hills plucky young lad I once was. Nah, piece of cake. First, we'll take him down. That'll be over in no time. Then, I'll destroy him. Again. We'll beat him to within an inch of his life, thrash his house, and then charge him through the nose to rebuild it. It's a win-win. Listen, man. I did some pretty bad shit in my time, but this all seems a bit... Either you're with me, or you're with... I don't know, man. Well, if you don't, I'll tell everyone you're just a tired old has-been who started to shit himself. He's got a weapon!
Oh, very good, Tag. So, staying with Afghanistan, of course, senior Tories tell Boris Johnson he has a duty to let in tens of thousands of fleeing Afghans. Senior Tories, now this is surprising, senior Tories have urged Boris Johnson to let in thousands of fleeing Afghans when he unveils what he's promised to be a world-leading resettlement scheme. Can we get away from this world-leading, world-beating, number one? It's just getting a little bit tacky, is it not? A weapon of mass distraction. Two former ministers said the UK had a duty to be as generous as nations such as Canada ahead of an expected announcement at the emergency Commons debate on Wednesday. But Priti Patel vowed to maintain vital national security checks. Of course, Priti Patel would say, yes, but are these people really Afghanis? Are these people really fleeing? Remember, we have to keep the racists happy. To counter the threat posed by the chaos in Afghanistan, the Home Secretary adding, we will not compromise on security. I think Priti Patel would really, really like to have a Hugo Boss uniform from the 1930s. She'd love to walk around wearing that. Or maybe she does, when when no one's around. She tries it on and, utters a few notions in front of the mirror. The Prime Minister is expected to set up a legal immigration route separate from the standard asylum system targeted privately, particularly at women and girls, and modelled on the help given to Syrians. The current Afghan Relocation and Assistance Policy, ARAP, scheme only applies to current or former locally employed staff assessed to be at serious risk to life. Canada has announced the country will resettle 20,000 vulnerable Afghans, including human rights workers, journalists and female leaders, with Germany expected to admit up to 10,000. Kudos to Canada, which is a much smaller country than Germany, of course, not in sense of population. Caroline Noakes, the former immigration minister, said Afghans are rightly scared, and the UK's role in and after 2001 invasion meant that it had a duty to help. Now, something I just want to raise here quickly is that there are other countries around the world where people are fleeing death and destruction. I'm not just saying that shouldn't everyone be, treated with respect if they are seeking asylum. Why do we have to wait until there's some massive event like this, and then we say, okay, now we're going to fast track some people? There are individuals around the world who have been cooperating with the British, for example, in this case, and are risking their lives, and they're not being fast tracked. Anyway. For 20 years, we've sought to help the people of Afghanistan to liberate them from the terrible oppressive regime, she told BBC Radio 4. We have worked alongside them. We have encouraged them to take up elected office, to play roles in society, and they were not previously have done so. Asked if it meant letting in 20,000, 30,000, 50,000, Ms. Noakes pointed to the Vulnerable Persons Resettlement Scheme for Syria, though which 20,000 refugees have arrived. Tiberius Elwood, a former defense minister, told the Politics Home website the number should be at least in the tens of thousands. You shouldn't put a number on this. You say whoever we can, we'll help. All the countries that have been involved have a duty to and an obligation to provide safe haven given where they've left the country, the chair of the Commons Defence Committee said. The Liberal Democrats, which have backed the resettlement of at least 20,000 Afghans, while Keir Starmer has said it is up to the Prime Minister to answer that question in Parliament. Before we get to a number, the first question is getting our international partners round the table, including neighbouring countries to Afghanistan, to draw up an urgent plan for the safe and legal exit of refugees that inevitably will flow from this, the Labour leader said. And it's a valid point. We need to find out how we can get as many people out as possible. And we need cooperation with neighbouring countries. Because people are going to naturally cross the border just to get away from the Taliban. He said, I don't think a plan of numbers at this stage is helpful discussion. The first decision has to be, is there a plan? Is there a strategy? And if Boris Johnson's in charge, of course, there isn't a plan and there isn't a strategy. 20,000 breaking news. See if I can open that. So you guys should be able to see this, yes. So it says here, Afghanistan, 20,000 refugees to resettle in the UK under PM's plan, but critics say it's not enough. So the UK will take up to 20,000 vulnerable Afghans over the coming years as part of the resettlement plan following the Taliban's takeover of the country. Under the new bespoke scheme modelled on the UK's 7-year programme to resettle Syrian refugees, the Prime Minister has promised thousands of Afghans who are most in need will be relocated to Britain. The government's aim for up to 5,000 Afghans who are at risk due to the current crisis in the country to be resettled in the UK in the scheme's first year. So some people are going to have to wait a while. Priority will be given to women and girls, and religious and other minorities who are at the most at risk of human rights abuses and maltreatment by the Taliban. Mr. Johnson, who spoke with US President Joe Biden on Tuesday night, unveiled the plans ahead of the emergency 5-hour debate in the House of Commons on Wednesday and the unfurling crisis in Afghanistan. This is probably going to piss off the House Speaker because he doesn't like these things leaked before they are mentioned in the House of Commons. Why did Boris Johnson leak this information first? I think to get ahead of Parliament, which is a bit disgusting because, releasing this information now doesn't help the people. I think it's an attempt, once again, to look good and win some sort of fight in Parliament. So he can turn around and say, the Liberal Democrats only wanted to bring in 10,000. The Labour Party didn't even know how many they wanted to bring in. We're going to bring in 20,000. See, look how great we are. The Tories are wonderful. The Tories are humanitarian. But the Prime Minister has already faced calls, including from his own Conservative MPs, to make more generous commitment on welcoming Afghans to the UK. The government has said the bespoke resettlement scheme will be kept under further review beyond its first year, with up to a total of 20,000 Afghans offered relocation in the long term. Nigel Farage won't be too happy. Yet former Cabinet Minister David Davis, a one-time Conservative leadership contender, said the UK should be looking to accept more than 50,000 Afghans due to the more direct moral responsibility following Britain's 2 decades of military intervention in Afghanistan. The SNP Westminster leader Ian Blackford said the UK should aim to grant asylum to 35,000 or more Afghan refugees, while the Liberal Democrats said the settlement of 20,000 Afghans to Britain should be the starting point and not the target. And then we heard what Labour said before. I think there needs to be an international cooperation in regards to this to make sure that we can get as many people out of there. People who have served coalition forces directly or indirectly, those people's their lives are at risk at the moment, because anyone who has worked for the Americans in particular will be regarded as a traitor. And we have to understand that it's not just someone being put in prison. In many cases, their families will suffer because perhaps that person was the breadwinner. There is no social safety net, of course, in Afghanistan. So many people will suffer if one person is either, taken away or worse. We have 307 viewers and only 177 likes. Smash that like button, guys. Nigel's whole dream has been destroyed now. I really hate Nigel Farage. Look, I uploaded a video, I made it yesterday and I uploaded it today or yesterday evening, I don't remember. But Nigel Farage, look, I thought he had gotten over his whole, breaking point. I knew that was an attempt to convince the racists and the bigots to vote for Brexit. And I didn't think he would do it again, especially when there's so much support at the moment. I believe the vast majority of people in Britain want to help the people of Afghanistan. They understand, these are people that relied on us. These are people that we needed in order to have our soldiers safe, to make sure that our soldiers were going to the right places, not going into, walking into a trap. These are people who have worked hard, put their lives on the line for us. Many people have died because of their association with the coalition forces. And the least we can do is, provide them safe haven. Because a lot of these people are ordinary people. They just want to get on with their lives. If they come to Britain or the United States or Canada, wherever, they want to get a job. They want to see their children go to school. They want their children to grow up in a safe environment. They're not people who are trying to profit from something. And Nigel Farage and others want to convince the public once again that these are people who are coming to take your jobs. Not heavy goods vehicle driver jobs, of course. No, these are people coming to take your jobs. They're being put up in 5-star hotels. Why are they being put up in 5-star hotels if that's even the case? They're put up in hotels because if they're put up in some sort of centre, the local people will come around and attempt to burn it to the ground because of ridiculous rhetoric from the likes of Nigel Farage and GB News and Talk Radio and other such idiots. So they have to be put up in hotels in some cases. Like wherever they go, they're going to be a target of people who have too much friggin' time on their hands. And instead of actually reading a book or trying to understand about what's happening in Afghanistan or what has happened in Afghanistan, they prefer to switch on the TV or put on YouTube and listen to some idiot with an opinion. Nigel Farage, I saw him once years ago on TV and never again. When Nigel talks about immigrants, it's like he's giving the Brexiteers a nice hug. Yes, because look, I'm sorry, this is going to piss off a lot of people. Probably not a lot of people on this stream. Maybe there's a few on the stream, but I don't care at this stage. Most people voted, I'm not saying all, but most people voted for Brexit to stop immigration and to keep people like the Afghan refugees out. And they say, no, we want legitimate refugees. No, you don't. It doesn't matter because how do you determine whether someone's a legitimate refugee until they arrive and they're processed? And most of the Brexiteers don't even want them processed. They don't want them arriving at all. They talk about sending the Royal Navy out to push rubber dinghies back. Complete lack of understanding of international rules and laws that the UK has signed up to. And has no intention of, for now I hope, of going back on. Rat still here, part of the community. One girl in my youngest girl's class in school. None were settled in unionist communities. They should tell you about their life here. And that's another problem. There was a situation in Northern Ireland where some people were run out of the community by loyalist paramilitaries. Loyalist paramilitaries who used to be shooting at Catholics, but now that there are no Catholics, they see Muslims and they say, well, we don't like these people either, so we're going to start threatening these people too. I have very little time for loyalist paramilitaries. I'm not talking about unionists. I have great respect for many people who are unionists. I have very little time for loyalists, because a lot of them are stupid people who don't have a brain cell between their ears and are easily provoked and easily convinced that their enemy is whoever the newspaper tells them. They're like the sort of knuckle-dragging Brexiteers you find in other parts of the UK. GB News sounds like American right-wing media in terms of tone. And it is. It's copy and paste Fox News or what do you call it, Newsmax, some of these other worse, the ones that are worse than Fox News, the ones that can say things that Fox News can't say. Can we send these bigots to Afghanistan? Yes. They'd fit right in with the Taliban. That's the problem. Farage would do very well. All Farage would have to do is grow a beard and he could pretty much say the same things as he's doing in the UK. I saw Farage talking in Ramsgate Harbour when I was lived there in the south of England. Total loser. Waste of space and time. But the people treat him as if he's some sort of celebrity. A man of the people. A man of the people who's chauffeur driven around in a Range Rover. A man of the people who made his money from selling shares or stocks or something in the city of London. The man of the people who probably lives in a multi-million-pound house and probably has a number of them. That's the real man of the people. Man of the people who convinces people, or the ordinary people, that the biggest problem they're facing is other poor people coming across coming across the channel in a rubber boat. Never question the owners of the Ritz or the owners of the Daily Mail or the Express who are pumping out this propaganda all the time. Never actually question, why are these people telling me this on a daily basis? Why are they telling me to be angry, always angry? Why are Brexiteers always angry? We should be the ones that are angry. I have friends and family who have lost freedom of movement. I'm angry for them. I'm angry about that was taken away from them. Brexiteers voted to take away everything that they had before, and they're still angry. Like, how can you win something and still be angry? It's like if you won the World Cup and you were angry about it. Imagine if you won a prize and it was the prize that you wanted. You say, I want that prize. I want that microwave or whatever. And you get the microwave and you're angry about it. Not angry that you received the microwave, but you're angry that other people may have also... No, worse than that. The microwave was not a prize that was just there. It was taken from someone else and given to you, and you're angry that the other person is upset that it was taken from them and given to you. That's what you're angry about. That's what Brexiteers seem to be angry about. Look at Andrew Walker or anyone like that. Angry people. Really, I don't understand. They won something and they're angry about it. Maxime, I just don't understand as to why you don't look at parliamentary committees thoroughly and are not hearing and listening to the entire story. I'm still disappointed with you on that. Toxic holy hand grenade? I'm not sure what you're talking about. I've been looking. Some of the committees are extremely long and they require a lot of time to review. Some of the committees go on for 2 or 3 hours, and honestly, I don't have the time to go through all of them. I try and find whatever ones I can, and also now that Parliament is in recess, a lot of these committees aren't taking place. So when they eventually come back from their holidays and the committees restart, and I have covered some of the committees already, I will start looking into them, I promise. I've been drawing... I have just been drawing a toothbrush moustache on pictures I see of Fresh. I just leave it for others to get it. Well said, Derek. These small things go, plant a seed in people's minds. I lived 2/3 of my life in Europe. Now I feel imprisoned on this island. Maximilian, while I understand that he's a very flawed character, he did the right thing in calling out Boris Johnson during the COVID-19 pandemic parliamentary committees, and he sincerely apologized for the actions he did during the pandemic. He has never shown he has shown far more humility than Boris or Matt Hancock. Obviously, these are... Sorry. We just need to explain to Dominic the truth about the Brexit, and the rest of the people will have... Sorry, I assume you're talking about Dominic Cummins. See, that's the problem with me. I don't believe Dominic Cummins, because Dominic Cummins was in charge of an organisation to convince people to vote for something that was going to make their lives worse. And he knew it, and he has never come out and said that Brexit was a mistake. He has never... You say that he has apologised for some of these, apologised for his actions during the pandemic. Okay, but he's apologised for his actions during the pandemic. But he didn't resign for that. Why didn't he resign at the time? And also the fact that he sat in the Rose Garden. There's some things... If he had made a mistake and he had apologized about it and he kept a low profile, he gave an interview in the Rose Garden, which is normally reserved for important people. So he was demonstrating... Now, maybe I'm misreading it, but I'm not the only one who's come to this conclusion. But many people viewed Dominic Cummins in the Rose Garden as demonstrating his power over the government. Because government ministers wouldn't be giving interviews in the Rose Garden. he was. Something that's reserved for more important people than him. So he will say, yes, I got it wrong, or yes, I was wrong about the pandemic. But when it came to Brexit, he hasn't apologized. And he used every dirty trick in the book to not to defeat the Labour Party or the Liberal Democrats or anything like that. No, he used every dirty trick in the book to trick the common person, the ordinary folk, the British people. And he hasn't apologized for that. He hasn't, or better than that, he hasn't tried to make amends. He hasn't tried to fix the problem. He hasn't come out and said, yes, Brexit was a mistake, Brexit is a disaster, and this is how we're going to deal with it. This is what we should be doing. I'm trying to fix the problem that I made. He's not trying to do that. All I see from Dominic Cummings is tweets, weird tweets from him saying, and also attacking Remainers, calling us the elite. I shared a tweet about him and I said, Dominic Cummings lives in a one, maybe even more than that, £1.5 million mansion that doesn't have a mortgage. It's owned by him, while I live in a €100,000 flat and I still have a mortgage. So the bank owns my property, he owns his, and he calls me and people like me the liberal elite. And he continues to do this. And he continues to say anyone who's against Brexit is a member of the metropolitan and liberal elite. So I don't trust Dominic Cummings. He hasn't come out and said that what he did was wrong when it came to Brexit. He may have apologised about his actions when it came to the pandemic. I don't believe him. Maybe I'm being disingenuous. Maybe I'm being... I don't trust people like that. Because they lie to you one day, they lie to you the second day, they lie to you the third day, and then on the fourth day they say, I'm sorry about lying to you on the Tuesday, on the second day. Please believe me. Yeah, no, I'm sorry, I don't. Anyway, got a bit distracted there. Sidetracked. I'm the elite dude. I'm making scrambled eggs in the microwave. I'm so elite. There you are, see? Are you sure you don't have your butler doing it for you? I'm sure Dominic Cummings has a butler. So I want to show you this video. So following the crisis that's taking place, of course, in Afghanistan, someone is taking the blame. And unfortunately, or fortunately, it's Joe Biden, US President. Now, it must be remembered that his predecessor, what's his name? The orange buffoon, Trump, made an agreement with the Taliban last year where he said that the US was going to withdraw. Now that it's withdrawn, it seems that the Republicans in the US are blaming Biden for the consequences. Like, I'm going to show you another video in a moment where Joe Biden defends his actions. But first, let's see this.
Well, John, Joe Biden is a president who prides himself on his foreign policy skills, yet here he is staring down the barrel of a foreign policy crisis that many, even those in his own party, believe is of his own making for not taking the threat of the Taliban seriously enough. You know, last week he was out talking up his infrastructure deal and he pointedly refused on 2 occasions to even address the crisis unfolding in front of him. So today will be the first time we've heard from the president publicly on this crisis, and the fact that he's flying back from his holiday rather to address the nation on TV tells you just how seriously he is now taking this situation. He will address the nation. He's expected not to announce the reversal of his plan to pull troops out of Afghanistan, but he will talk about how he plans to safely evacuate the thousands of Americans and allied Afghans still left inside the country, whether or not he also plans to engage even with the Taliban, and of course how he even managed to allow some of those chaotic, ugly scenes we've all witnessed in the past 24 hours, how he's even managed to allow those to occur in the first place.
The likelihood there's going to be The Taliban overrunning everything and owning the whole country is highly unlikely.
The words of President Joe Biden on July the 8th as he attempted to reassure that the US withdrawal from Afghanistan wouldn't lead to immediate chaos for its people. His administration privately believed it would take 6 to 12 months for the Taliban to even attempt to take control. In the end, it took just hours. The president seemingly caught by surprise as he was forced to break from his holiday for emergency talks with the US National Security Team as the crisis he calculated could not unfold, unfolded.
Well, the president did not think it was inevitable.
Sorry, Saul is correct here. I could have told you that the Taliban would take control in a matter of days. I mean, ordinary people just changed their clothing. And that's true. And as I said this before, there was no loyalty to the state. There was loyalty to a paycheck. And there was a risk that that paycheck was going to finish because the state was going to collapse. Then what were the people fighting for? It had a cascading effect as well.
That the Taliban were going to take control of Afghanistan. He thought the Afghan National Security Forces could step up and fight because we spent 20 years, tens of billions of dollars training them, giving them the best equipment, giving them support of U.S. forces for 20 years. And when push came to shove, they decided not to step up and fight for their country.
That's one American way of looking at it. Another is that the US withdrew its troops too quickly, with no proper plan in place for what many saw as the inevitable rise of the Taliban as soon as the American soldiers had departed.
The idea that the status quo could have been maintained by keeping our forces there, I think is simply wrong.
A bleary-eyed Secretary of State was dispatched to the networks on Sunday to insist that had Joe Biden not stuck to the Trump administration's agreement to withdraw US troops from Afghanistan, the situation would now be far worse.
We would have been back at war with the Taliban, and I'd probably be on this program today explaining why we were sending tens of thousands of American forces back into Afghanistan and back to war, something the American people simply don't support.
So I want to show you another video. This is Joe Biden. It's just from Twitter.
More generation.
So this is quite an interesting video. Biden saying, the answer is clear. We cannot continue to repeat the mistakes of the past. So is a clear break with the past. The idea that we're no longer going to be sending troops into the into Afghanistan.
How many more generations of America's daughters and sons would you have me send to fight Afghanistan's civil war when Afghan troops will not? How many more lives, American lives, is it worth? How many endless rows of headstones at Arlington National Cemetery? I'm clear on my answer. I will not repeat the mistakes we've made in the past. Mistake of staying and fighting indefinitely in a conflict that is not in the national interest of the United States, of doubling down on a civil war in a foreign country, of attempting to remake a country through the endless military deployments of U.S. forces. Those are the mistakes we cannot continue to repeat. How many more generations of America's daughters and sons?
Sorry, it was repeating. I think this is an attempt to reach out to the public. This is a populist message. This is the type of, if it was written in a different way, this could have been delivered by Trump. The idea, we're getting out of Afghanistan, we've wasted money, lives in Afghanistan, we're not going to continue this war. What is the point of this? And to a certain extent, I think this, I don't know the feeling of the US citizens, but I have a feeling that most people will be probably quite happy with this message. Why are we still there? We've been there for 20 years. Why hasn't Afghanistan, why isn't it able to stand on its own 2 feet? How long would American soldiers have to stay there? And I think this is going to be the response to the Republicans when the Republicans say, oh, you left with your tail between your legs or whatever. A response the Democrats could have to that is, how long should we stay there? We've been there 20 years, and Afghanistan don't have a functioning government. Once again, I'm not blaming the Afghans here. There are huge problems. There wasn't real nation building taking place. And we've seen in the past how Afghanistan is rightly called the graveyard of empires. It was a hopeless situation. They shouldn't have taken place in the first place. Let me read some more of your comments. Tulsi Gabbard was trying the same thing after Democratic primaries. Google censored her campaign ads. Yeah, Tulsi Gabbard, and I was supportive of Tulsi Gabbard. She was saying, look, we need to get out of this. What's the point in staying here? And I think Tulsi Gabbard was a veteran of either Afghanistan or of Iraq. Toxic Hand Grenade, don't get me wrong, Robespierre, he may have lied back then, but it takes time for him to redeem himself over time. He must have been fairly commended for standing up against Boris Johnson. You don't have to like him, but in the end of the day, we cannot trust absolutely the news outlet. No, and I agree, but I'm not judging Dominic Cummings on what he has said in the papers. I don't trust him according to his actions. He was involved in manipulation of the public. And look at the result of it. It has made people poorer. Some people, unfortunately, have taken drastic measures following the consequences of Brexit. Many generations have lost freedom of movement. A huge benefit for many people. And he was part of the plan to convince people and then we're going to move on from this. He was part of the plan to convince people to vote for that, to vote for a lie. And he either knew it was a lie or he just didn't care. I think he knew it was a lie. Just to give you an example, the Vote Leave campaign created flyers with the NHS logo on them. I covered it in a video. I don't know if the video is still up online. But they created leaflets convincing people that there are extra waiting lists, or the waiting lists are longer because of Brexit, because the UK was a member of the European Union, and they printed the NHS logo slightly off so they could get away with it, and they left it in NHS clinics and hospitals. So when you or I or anyone who would go for an operation or go to visit someone and you had to wait in the waiting room, you'd pick up this flyer thinking it's from the NHS, and it was actually from Vote Leave, convincing people that the NHS would be better off outside the European Union. And he was part of that, and he hasn't apologised for that. So I'm sorry, I have very little time for Dominic Cummings. I keep saying Dominic Raab. No, Dominic Cummings has nothing to do with the Biden story. Yes, I'm sorry, I got distracted. Getting distracted, mate. Yes, let's move on. We're almost at the end of the stream, but I want to cover this story about a bit more positive, maybe. It's not a great week. It's only Tuesday. So it says here, pressure increasing on Rishi Sunak to suspend triple lock on pensions. So Rishi Sunak has come under further pressure to suspend the state pension triple lock after wage figures show that the Chancellor is on course to pay pensioners a rise of more than 8% next year. So there are special pensions where people are getting more than the rate of inflation, it seems. So Sunak is understood to be considering telling Britain's 12 million state pensions claimants that the pandemic has artificially inflated the average wage figures, and a new formula is needed to calculate the rise in the basic state pension for next year. This is not a very good decision to make if you want to keep the Tories on your side, because the older generation generally vote more conservative, also with a small c. And in Britain, of course, they're more likely to vote for the Conservative Party. So cutting their pension is not going to win a lot of votes. Decade-long triple lock, which Boris Johnson's government pledged to maintain at the 2019 election, is, of course, they promised to maintain it because it's a vote winner. is underpinned by a promise to pay either 2.5% of the inflation rate or the level of earnings recorded in the July employment figures. In the latest official figures for June, earnings increased 8.8%, including bonuses, and analysis said that they were on course to remain above 8% next month, setting the stage for a political battle over the triple lock. Isn't it interesting how wages have increased 8.8%, but they're giving the nurses 3%, is it? Or 2%? Sunak has responded to calls for pension payments to rise by 2.5% or to track inflation, which is expected to hit 4% this year. No, it's 3.5%. So even if... No, 3%. Was it? 3%. By saying that he will leave the decision until the autumn. Julian Jessup, who's from the right-wing think tank, an economic advisor for the free market think tank, the Institute for Economic Affairs, said each percentage point increase in earnings growth will add about 900 million to annual spending on state pensions next year and in future years. A rise based on the latest figures show would therefore cost the Exchequer at least £5 billion more than the 2.5% increase. The pay data has been distorted by the pandemic in ways that no one could have anticipated, he said. Unless the triple lock is changed, this will provide an unintended windfall for pensioners that is increasingly hard to justify. The Office of National Statistics said a more accurate reflection of pay growth will be between 3.5% and 4.9% because of the official figure. Now, this is irrelevant to what I want to say. Are they getting paid too much? Are they getting paid enough? I don't know. But if you're seen to cut it, you're going to piss off the pensioners. And the pensioners are the ones who come out and vote. Pensioners have a lot of time on their hands. Pensioners like to write to politicians. Young people don't send letters to politicians. Young people don't come out and vote so much, unfortunately. Pensioners do. Pensioners are have a lot of time on their hands, and the devil makes the devil makes work for idle hands. No offense to pensioners, of course, but the majority or a significant number of them vote for the Conservative Party. So this could be seen as pissing off your base, and it's not a good idea to piss off your base because they could not turn up, or worse, they could vote for the other side. So Keir Starmer could come out and say, the Tories have ended the triple lock pensions. I'm going to maintain them. That's all he has to say. He doesn't have to say how, doesn't have to say where he's going to find the money, doesn't have to say by how much, just have to say, I'm going to maintain it. These people have worked their arse off for all their life. The Labour Party care about them. We're going to maintain it and reinforce that message. You have to play this game. I really don't understand why the Tories are talking about getting rid of it, unless they're talking about getting rid of it and then maintaining it, just to keep it in the news and use it as a political tool. But I don't see them doing that, because when Boris Johnson makes a promise, it's probably the other way things are going. Let me read some of your comments. Richard, you're an owl fella now. You made it. So why are people blaming Afghanistan for the Taliban when it was the US that funded extremists in the first place, just because the US didn't like the government during the 1970s? Look, I'm not going down that road, but look, the problem is at the moment is the Taliban are basically fascists and Nazis, and they're not someone you can really deal with. Yes, the origins, of course, were the Mujahideen that were supported by the CIA and the American government in general. But we can't turn back the clock at this stage. So they are a problem. They're not really a problem for us, which unfortunately I think is not going to mean is you're going to have a lot of flowery language over the next number of days and weeks. But I'm almost, and I hate to say this, but give it a month's time, we won't be talking about Afghanistan. But the people in Afghanistan will be suffering the consequences of the Taliban. We're not like in the 1970s anymore. The crisis that brought down Jimmy Carter, I don't see it bringing down Joe Biden. Joe Biden could also, in a sense, get a bit of a boost from this. He's the one who ended it. George W. Bush started it. Obama promised to end it. Trump promised to end it. I ended it. That's something that could happen. I don't know if it would work. I'm not familiar with U.S. politics. I don't know how it's playing out in the U.S. In the short term, probably he's viewed as some sort of failure. But later on, time has a way of making people forget, and he could be using it as a look. I'm the one who got the troops home. Nobody else did. You left a disaster behind, but the general public don't really care about that. I don't think. Maybe I'm being, cruel to the American public, but I think in most cases the general public, if they think their soldiers are are out fighting for something that's worth it, they'll support it. But if they don't see any value in it, they'd prefer to have their troops home. And Joe Biden could be the one saying, I'm the one who brought home the troops. It's too messy for Biden to get a boost from it. I think at the moment, yes. But the problem with these sort of stories is that the disaster will stay, will rumble away in the background. But once the media have moved on, we tend to forget about these things, unfortunately. Look at, for example, a very good example is Yemen. We haven't heard about Yemen. When was the last time we heard about Yemen? Does that mean that everything is hunky-dory in Yemen at the moment? Of course not. But it means that, once we move on, once the media move on, we forget about these things, and politicians who may have been in trouble at the time get off scot-free. Anyway, guys, it's just over the time of the stream, so I'll have to cut it off for tonight. And thank you so much for all of your super chats. Thanks to everyone who came on tonight and for smashing the like button. I know that there weren't very uplifting topics tonight. Unfortunately, things are not going very well in Afghanistan in particular this week. I truly hope that that the worst does not come to the worst. I'm not positive about the situation. I think we have to be realistic. The wrong people are in charge. The wrong people, the really are the wrong people who should be running the country. So many freedoms that women and girls enjoyed a week ago are likely to be taken away. Highly likely to be taken away. We can try and put a positive spin on it, saying that we're going to work with them or whatever, but I really don't see that happening. The priority seems to be at the moment just to get as many of Westerners out, people who have worked with the Western coalition, get them out as well, try and get their families out as well, and leave Afghanistan alone. That seems to be the policy at the moment. We have a duty to look after the people who have put their lives on the line for us as well. We created this mess. We should be fixing it. We're not. We're leaving. But I think the only way out of this is for the Afghan people to deal with the Taliban. We have tried. The Americans have tried. The Russians have tried. But at the end of the day, I think if the Taliban are eventually overthrown, it will be by the Afghan people, not by outside forces. So on that note, let's finish with one funny video for the end. I have to end on a positive note, of course. This is Tig once again, one of my favorite YouTubers.
There's this new singer-songwriter that everyone's talking about, She's very, very good now, actually. I have to say she's great. I love her. So I'm just trying to keep her grounded. So I've just popped a little comment under her new album release tweet.
What did you say?
Attention whore. So hopefully now that'll just keep her nice in.
Are you okay, Rory?
She's just replied, "Get a life, loser troll." But I was just trying to... This'll get us back on track. My friend's son has just posted a picture of himself on a soup run. Aww. This guy now is about, 15? 16? Imagine thinking of anyone but yourself at that age. Wow.
What are you going to say?
I'm just saying, oh, cry me a river, you virtue-signalling little You know, and again, obviously, needless to say, the aim of the game there, toughen him up now to prepare him down the line, you know, for...
Are you okay, Roy?
He's just blocked me. He's just completely cut me out. You know what? I'm just going to try one more. This is perfect. A video called Funny Baby, Angry Dog. Brilliant. This family are having the best day of their lives. I think I'll just ground them. I'm just writing, ugly baby, stupid fat granddad die.
That doesn't really make any sense. Are you referencing the video title?
Yeah.
And die? That's a bit...
Is it? They'll probably understand that I was just trying to...
What is it?
We know your location, sent to the cops. Best wishes, stupid fat granddad. But I was just trying to...
It's probably how... It's the way I view all trolls. So they're trying to help, but in a sort of twisted way. So guys, thanks so much for coming on the stream tonight. Thanks to everyone who has supported the channel so far tonight, and thanks to the moderators for doing a wonderful job as always. I'll see you all on Friday. Probably have a special guest on Friday, another YouTuber. I hope you can tune in. It hasn't been completely confirmed, but it should be ready to go. So I'll let you know a little bit later on in the week. So have a great evening. I'll see you all on a Friday, same bat time, same bat channel, 9:30 British summertime. Have a great week, and once again, thanks to everyone who came on. Thanks for smashing the like button, and thanks to the moderators for keeping the stream on the straight and narrow. And of course, thanks for all of those super chats, greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot, guys. Stay safe, and I'll see you on Friday. Take care. Good night.